All right, so get ready to really dive into some serious drama today.
Oh, yeah?
Because we are tackling one of Shakespeare's most famous tragedies,
Mm-hmm.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
We're going deep into the world of feuding families,
Yeah.
secret romances, and some seriously questionable decisions.
And while we all might know, I guess, like, the basic plot points,
Right.
star-crossed lovers,
Okay.
poison, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of uncover, I think, some of the nuances and the hidden depths of this play that make it so much more than a simple love story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about like those aha moments that
Yeah.
make you see the play in a whole new light.
Yeah.
And we've got a stack of sources here: original text, critical interpretations, historical context, the works.
Yeah.
So if you think you've got Romeo and Juliet all figured out,
Yeah.
get ready to be surprised.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Verona, Italy,
Yes.
not exactly known for its chill vibes, right?
Yeah.
Shakespeare throws us right into this world where the Montagues and the Capulets are like basically at war.
Mm.
And not even like a cute Instagrammable war.
Right.
We're talking servants brawling in the streets.
Yeah.
The prince threatening to exile everyone.
Wow.
It's intense.
Shakespeare doesn't waste any time establishing the stakes right away.
Right.
We see this feud.
Yeah.
It isn't just some family squabble.
Right.
It's this deeply rooted conflict that's poisoning the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
The prince's warning is crucial because it tells us that love isn't the only thing hanging in the balance. Lives are at stake.
Yeah. And into this powder keg walks our main man, Romeo,
Yeah.
pining away for Rosaline.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
She's not into him.
Oh,
It's like Shakespeare is setting the stage for something bigger, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. I mean, this unrequited love might seem like a minor detail,
Right.
but it speaks volumes about Romeo's character.
Okay.
It reveals his tendency, I think, towards these grand, all-consuming passions,
Mm-hmm.
setting the stage for his, well, I guess you could say, infatuation with Juliet.
Right. And speaking of Juliet,
Yes,
let's talk about their first encounter at the Capulet feast.
of course.
Talk about a meet cute, or, a
Yeah.
meet doomed to fail considering their families are
Right.
sworn enemies.
Oh, yeah, love at first sight is a powerful force,
It is.
and Shakespeare captures that perfectly
He does.
in their dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to remember the context here.
Yes.
These two are from families who would rather see each other dead
Oh,
than
absolutely.
sharing a dance floor.
Right. And as if things weren't complicated enough.
Right.
We get that iconic balcony scene.
Yes.
Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?
Mhm.
It's enough to make anyone swoon.
It is.
But it also reveals a lot about Juliet, don't you think?
Definitely. I think while Romeo's kind of caught up in the romance,
Right.
Juliet's the one with her feet on the ground.
Okay.
She recognizes the danger, even calling Romeo out on it. But she's also falling for him,
Of course.
which makes their situation all the more captivating.
It's that push and pull between head and heart, right?
Right.
And I think that's something we can all relate to,
Absolutely.
even if our families aren't trying to kill each other.
Exactly. And this internal conflict
Yeah.
is what makes their love story so compelling.
Right.
They know the risks, but they choose to follow their hearts. Consequences be damned.
And the biggest consequence of all,
Right.
their decision to get married
Mm-hmm.
secretly? Talk about a power move.
Right.
But let's talk about Friar Lawrence for a second.
Okay.
He agrees to marry them,
He does.
hoping that their union will heal the feud.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always wondered,
Yeah.
was he being a bit naive?
Okay.
What's your take on his motivations?
Oh. Well, picking up where we left off, Romeo and Juliet have just taken a huge leap of faith by getting secretly married.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
but as we know,
Right.
things are about to go very, very wrong.
Yes,
Romeo's attempt to avoid conflict backfires spectacularly,
it does.
and he finds himself banished from Verona.
Right.
We talked about bad timing.
We did.
This is Shakespeare at his most brutal.
Banishment might seem like a light sentence to a modern audience,
Right.
but in Shakespeare's time, it was essentially a fate worse than death.
Wow.
Romeo is cut off from everything he holds dear, his family, his friends,
Right.
and most importantly, Juliet.
And Juliet's in an impossible position, too.
Yes.
She's grieving Tybalt's death.
Of course.
Romeo's gone.
Right.
And now her parents are pushing her to marry Paris.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help but feel for her.
No.
She's surrounded by people who have no idea what's really going on in her heart.
This is one of the most tragic aspects of the play, I think. This constant miscommunication.
Yes.
This lack of awareness about what others are going through.
Right.
It's a vicious cycle of misunderstandings that ultimately leads to their downfall.
It's like everyone's speaking a different language,
Right.
even though they're using the same words.
Yes.
And that brings us to Friar Lawrence's master plan. Okay.
A potion that mimics death.
Mm-hmm.
A secret message to Romeo.
Yeah.
It's risky, it's convoluted,
Yeah.
and honestly, it sounds like something out of a soap opera.
Right.
When I first read this, I was like, Friar, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Famous last words, right?
It's a desperate plan for a desperate situation.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to remember that Friar Lawrence is acting with the best of intentions.
Okay.
He's trying to find a solution,
Right.
a way out of this mess that doesn't end in more bloodshed.
He's trying to play matchmaker, A&D peacemaker
He is.
with disastrous results.
And this is where fate, or perhaps just plain bad luck, steps in.
Yeah.
The messenger carrying the friar's all-important letter to Romeo, explaining the whole not actually dead situation.
Yeah,
It's quarantined.
Of all the times for a public health crisis, right?
Right.
Talk about a communication breakdown. This seemingly minor detail has huge repercussions.
It did. Leading to the most tragic misunderstanding of all.
It's a cruel twist of fate that highlights the fragility of their plan.
Yeah.
One small mishap, and everything spirals out of control.
And Romeo, completely unaware of the plan,
Right.
receives the worst possible news that Juliet is dead.
Oh, no.
Now, most people would,
Yeah.
try to confirm this information.
Right.
Maybe send a strongly worded text,
Right.
but not Romeo.
He's consumed by grief, blinded by his love for Juliet.
Right.
He can't fathom a world without her.
Wow.
And in that moment of despair, he makes a choice that seals his fate.
Yeah.
He decides to join Juliet in death,
Wow.
believing that's the only way they can truly be together.
So we've just witnessed the devastating climax of Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
The poison, the dagger,
That's a
the
lot.
heartbreaking confessions.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
But even amidst all the tragedy, there's this lingering question.
Yeah.
Why does this play, written over 400 years ago, still resonate so deeply with audiences today?
It's a testament, I think, to Shakespeare's genius.
Right.
That he was able to tap into something so universal, so timeless
Yeah.
about the human experience.
Yeah.
We might not be facing feuding families or arranged marriages in the 21st century, but the core themes of love, loss,
Right.
miscommunication, and the consequences of our actions, those are things everyone can relate to.
Yeah, it's like he had this uncanny ability to see into the heart of what it means to be human,
Yes.
regardless of the time period.
Precisely. And I think that's why Romeo and Juliet continues to be reinterpreted
Right,
and
yeah.
reimagined in so many different ways.
Oh, yeah.
Through film, music, dance,
Yeah.
even visual art.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because
Yeah.
one of the things that struck me during this deep dive
Okay.
is how much emphasis Shakespeare places on fate.
Right.
It's almost like Romeo and Juliet are trapped in this predetermined tragedy, like they never really had a chance.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's a question that scholars have been grappling with for centuries.
Right.
The role of fate versus free will in the play.
Mm-hmm.
Is there tragedy inevitable, or is it a series of unfortunate choices that lead to their downfall?
It's almost like Shakespeare is saying that even with the best intentions, and let's be real,
Right.
not everyone in this play had good intentions.
Right.
Things can still go horribly wrong.
Exactly. There's this sense that even if a few small details had been different,
Yeah.
if that letter hadn't been delayed,
Oh my
if
goodness.
Romeo had arrived at the tomb just a few moments later,
Right.
their fate might have been entirely different.
Wow.
It makes you wonder about those sliding door moments in our own lives, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the power of communication.
Yes.
Or rather, the devastating consequences of miscommunication.
Right.
So much of the tragedy in this play could have been avoided if people had just talked to each other.
I know.
Shared their feelings, cleared up misunderstandings. Like, come on.
That's such an important point, I think.
Yeah.
Shakespeare highlights the dangers of acting on assumptions.
Right.
Of letting pride and prejudice cloud our judgment.
Of course.
Romeo and Juliet are victims of their family's feud,
Right.
but they're also victims of their own impulsiveness,
Right.
their inability to fully understand the consequences of their actions.
And that brings us back to why this play still matters today.
Right.
Because even though we might not be caught in a feud between the Montagues and Capulets,
Okay.
we still face those same challenges.
We do.
The need to communicate effectively,
Right.
to bridge divides,
Yes,
to think critically about the information we receive,
of course.
and to consider the potential consequences of our actions.
It's a timeless message, beautifully and tragically rendered in Romeo and Juliet.
It is.
It's a story that stays with us long after we close the book,
Right.
prompting us to reflect on our own lives, our relationships, and the choices we make every single day.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of tragedy,
Yes,
there's always something to learn, something to reflect on.
there is.
And sometimes the most powerful lessons are the ones that break our hearts.
They are.
So the next time you find yourself drawn to the story of Romeo and Juliet, and trust me, you will be,
Right.
remember that it's more than just a tragic love story. It's a timeless exploration of the human condition,
Right.
full of insights that are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another exploration into the world of ideas that matter.